Imagine discovering that one of the most common money-saving habits in your kitchen could also be changing certain foods in ways you never expected. Almost everyone has done it. You cook a large meal, place the leftovers in the refrigerator, and reheat them the next day to save time, reduce waste, and stretch the grocery budget. It feels practical and responsible. According to the source, however, there are 4 specific foods that deserve much more attention when it comes to reheating. The concern is not simply that they lose flavor or texture. The source explains that repeated heating may change the chemistry of these foods in ways that increase your exposure to compounds that cancer researchers have spent decades studying. I am Dr. Sofia, and over the years I have spoken with many patients who were shocked to learn that some everyday kitchen habits may deserve a second look. They often ask the same question: why has nobody ever explained this before? The answer is usually simple. Most conversations about food focus on calories, sugar, fat, or salt. Very little time is spent discussing what repeated heating can do to certain ingredients after they have already been cooked once. According to the source, that is exactly why this discussion matters. The goal is not to create fear or convince you to throw away every leftover meal. The goal is to understand which foods require extra caution and why simple changes in the way you prepare or store them may reduce unnecessary exposure to potentially harmful compounds over the years. Before looking at the 4 foods themselves, the source explains that understanding the chemistry behind reheating makes the recommendations much easier to understand. Whenever food is cooked, heat naturally changes proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and other compounds. Many of these reactions are harmless and even desirable because they improve flavor, texture, and digestibility. According to the source, the concern begins when certain foods are heated a second time. By then, many of the natural antioxidants originally present in the food have already been reduced. Those antioxidants normally help protect against oxidation and other chemical reactions. During storage, additional changes may also occur as bacteria and naturally occurring enzymes continue acting on the food, especially compounds containing nitrogen or naturally occurring nitrates. When heat is applied again, the source explains that these reactions may continue, producing larger amounts of substances such as nitrosamines and heterocyclic amines. These compounds have received considerable attention in cancer research because long-term exposure has been investigated as one possible contributor to several forms of cancer. The source specifically highlights pancreatic cancer because it often develops silently for many years before symptoms appear. According to the source, the pancreas usually gives very little warning while damage slowly accumulates. That is why prevention and reducing unnecessary exposure to potentially harmful compounds become especially important. The first food on today's list is processed meat, especially processed meat that has already been cooked once and is then reheated. According to the source, this includes foods such as bacon, hot dogs, sausage, ham, deli meats, smoked meats, and other products preserved with nitrates or nitrites. These preservatives help extend shelf life and reduce bacterial growth, but they also provide the ingredients needed for chemical reactions that can produce nitrosamines. The source explains that some nitrosamines may already be present during food processing before the product ever reaches your kitchen. When these meats are reheated at high temperatures, particularly in a microwave or frying pan, additional nitrosamine formation may occur because heat accelerates the reaction between nitrites and naturally occurring compounds found in meat proteins. According to the source, cancer researchers have investigated dietary nitrosamines for many years as one possible pathway contributing to pancreatic cancer risk. The practical recommendation is straightforward. If you choose to eat processed meats, prepare only the amount you plan to eat at one meal instead of repeatedly reheating leftovers. The source also recommends avoiding prolonged high-temperature reheating whenever possible because additional heat continues driving the same chemical reactions. This does not mean every serving of processed meat guarantees disease. Instead, according to the source, reducing repeated exposure over many years represents a practical step toward lowering unnecessary risk. And while processed meats are often expected to appear on lists like this, the second food surprises almost everyone because it is widely recognized as one of the healthiest vegetables you can eat. Now we come to the second food, and according to the source, this is the one that surprises almost everyone because it has one of the healthiest reputations of any vegetable in the grocery store. Spinach has long been praised for its iron, folate, vitamins, antioxidants, and many other nutrients that support overall health. None of that changes. The concern described in the source begins only after spinach has been cooked, cooled, stored, and then reheated. According to the source, fresh spinach naturally contains nitrates, compounds that are harmless and may even support healthy circulation. The situation changes during storage. As cooked spinach sits, even inside the refrigerator, Naturally occurring bacteria and enzyme activity gradually convert some of those nitrates into nitrites. When the spinach is heated again, the source explains that the combination of heat, nitrites, and naturally occurring amino acids may promote the formation of nitrosamines. Because nitrosamines have been investigated as potential carcinogens, the source recommends avoiding repeated reheating whenever possible. It also points out that this discussion extends beyond spinach alone. Other nitrate-rich vegetables, including celery, beetroot, kale, and carrots, may undergo similar chemical changes under certain storage and reheating conditions. According to the source, one simple solution is to prepare only the amount of leafy vegetables you plan to eat, or enjoy leftover spinach cold the following day in a salad rather than reheating it. That approach preserves much of the original nutritional value, while avoiding the additional heat-driven reactions discussed in the source. The message is not to stop eating spinach. In fact, the source repeatedly recognizes it as a highly nutritious vegetable. The recommendation is simply to change how leftovers are handled after cooking. The third food shifts our attention away from vegetables and towards something found in nearly every kitchen: cooking oil. According to the source, the greatest concern is not using oil once for cooking, but repeatedly heating the same oil or reheating foods that have already been fried in that oil. Oils rich in polyunsaturated fats, including sunflower, soybean, corn, and canola oil, begin undergoing a process called lipid oxidation whenever they are heated to cooking temperatures. During this process, oxygen reacts with the fats, gradually producing breakdown products including aldehydes, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and other oxidized compounds that have been widely studied in food chemistry and cancer research. The source explains that every additional heating cycle continues this breakdown from where the previous one stopped. Even more importantly, the smoke point of cooking oil gradually decreases after repeated use, allowing harmful breakdown products to form more quickly at lower temperatures than they did during the original cooking process. According to the source, reheating fried foods may further increase exposure because uneven heating creates microscopic hotspots across the surface of the food. Some areas become much hotter than others, encouraging additional formation of these compounds even when the food does not appear visibly burned. The source recommends discarding frying oil after one use rather than saving it for future meals. If leftover fried food must be reheated, using a moderate oven temperature is presented as a better option than exposing the food to intense microwave heating that may produce uneven surface temperatures. The overall goal is to reduce repeated exposure to oxidation products rather than eliminate cooking oil completely. And while these first three foods involve chemical changes produced by heat, the fourth and final food follows an entirely different pathway involving bacteria, toxins, and the importance of safe food storage. Now we come to the fourth and final food on the list, and according to the source, this one is different from everything we've discussed so far because the primary concern is not the formation of additional carcinogenic compounds during reheating. Instead, it involves bacteria and the toxins they leave behind before the food is reheated. That food is rice. Rice is one of the most commonly prepared foods in the world, and many families cook large batches so they can enjoy leftovers throughout the week. According to the source, the problem begins when cooked rice sits at room temperature for too long after it has been prepared. Rice naturally contains spores from a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. These spores can survive the original cooking process and begin growing as the rice cools. During that growth period, the bacteria may produce toxins. The source explains that reheating the rice later can destroy the bacteria themselves, but it may not destroy the toxins that were already formed. These heat-stable toxins can survive microwaving and conventional reheating. In the short term, they have been associated with nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, and diarrhea. According to the source, repeated exposure to these toxins may also contribute to chronic inflammation within the digestive tract, and chronic inflammation has long been studied as one factor associated with increased gastrointestinal cancer risk. For that reason, the source recommends cooling cooked rice quickly, refrigerating it within 1 hour, storing it for no longer than 24 hours, and reheating it only once until it is steaming hot all the way through. Cooking smaller portions instead of repeatedly reheating large batches is presented as one of the simplest ways to reduce unnecessary exposure while still enjoying rice as part of a balanced diet. According to the source, the important lesson is not that leftovers are automatically dangerous or that every reheated meal should be avoided. Instead, each of these four foods follows a different pathway that deserves attention. Processed meats already contain nitrate-based preservatives that may form additional nitrosamines when reheated at high temperatures. Spinach and other nitrate-rich vegetables may undergo nitrate to nitrite conversion during storage, followed by additional chemical reactions when heated again. Reused cooking oils continue breaking down with every heating cycle, producing larger amounts of oxidation products that have attracted significant attention in food science research. Rice follows an entirely separate mechanism involving bacterial growth and heat-stable toxins, rather than chemical changes produced directly by reheating. Although these mechanisms are different, the source explains that they all support one practical message. Small changes in everyday cooking habits may help reduce unnecessary exposure to compounds researchers continue investigating in connection with long-term health. Rather than focusing on complicated diets or expensive supplements, the recommendations center on simple kitchen decisions that almost anyone can begin making immediately. The source finishes by summarizing 4 straightforward habits. If you eat processed meat, prepare only the amount you plan to eat instead of repeatedly reheating leftovers. If you cook spinach or other nitrate-rich leafy vegetables, enjoy leftovers cold rather than heating them again whenever possible. Never reuse cooking oil for another meal, and avoid repeatedly reheating fried foods that have already been exposed to high temperatures. Finally, cool cooked rice quickly, refrigerate it promptly, and reheat it only once before discarding any remaining leftovers. According to the source, none of these recommendations require you to completely change your diet or stop enjoying the foods you love. Instead, they represent practical adjustments designed to reduce repeated exposure to potentially harmful compounds over many years. The source also emphasizes that cancer is a complex disease, influenced by genetics, lifestyle, environmental exposures, and many other factors. No single food determines whether someone develops cancer. However, reducing unnecessary exposure to compounds that have been investigated in cancer research is presented as one sensible part of an overall healthy lifestyle. The final message is simple. Your kitchen habits matter. The choices you make after dinner can be just as important as the ingredients you choose before you begin cooking. Sometimes protecting your long-term health is not about adding something new to your diet. It is simply about changing the way familiar foods are stored, reheated, and served. Those small decisions, repeated week after week and year after year, may become some of the most valuable habits you ever develop for yourself and your family.